We're going to talk about training related to forests at the Nicholas School. And whether we're talking about climate change or biodiversity conservation, water quality or renewable energy, local amenities or sustainable resource production, forests are connected to just about every leading environmental issue facing the world today. And Duke has been training master's students to pursue careers that result in tangible improvements in forest resources locally, nationally, globally for more than 75 years. So Nicholas School has a succinct mission statement. Here it is, creating knowledge and global leaders of consequence for a sustainable future. As it indicates, this is a combined research and teaching mission. Now, our discussion at this open house is going to focus mainly on the teaching component of our mission, how we train students to become decision makers who can make a difference with respect to forestry management and forestry policy issues in the public, private, nonprofit sectors. But research does underpin our teaching program, and so we want to say a little bit about it at the outset before we dig more into the purely teaching side. And the importance of research is it ensures that our students receive the most up-to-date information on forest science, forest management, and forest policy. So I'm going to give you just a few examples of the connections between forest-related research and forest-related teaching at the Nicholas School before we talk in more detail about our programs. So I'll refer to three specific examples. Starting on the left here, our professor Liz Shapiro Garza is an expert on community forest management in Mexico. And through her research, she's created opportunities for students to visit Mexico on field trips and get involved in her work. She's created opportunities for students to serve as interns during the summer months. And that work has also led to master's projects, which I'll say a little bit more about later for students. And in a very exciting development, thanks to her research and student engagement, recently the Duke Carbon Offsets Initiative has launched a program of actually paying community forest owners in Mexico to manage their forests in ways that sequester more carbon. And as the most recent IPCC report indicates, it's really important to ensure that forests have a role in addressing climate change. Second example, skipping to another part of the world, is Professor John Polson's work on the African forest elephant, which only recently was recognized as a distinct elephant species in Africa. John focuses his work in Gabon. That work has provided the basis for a field trip for students to Gabon. Again, internships and master's projects. And I forgot to mention when I described Liz's work, at the bottom there's a link, actually at the bottom of each of these three columns, a link where you can learn more about the research that I'm describing. The third example over on the right refers to Professor Dan Richter's work. Dan's a soil scientist, and his work was recently profiled in Duke University's main magazine, simply called Duke Magazine, and that's titled From Treetops to Bedrock. And Dan's work is shedding new light on long-term forest change and the forces that drive it and the consequences of those changes. Students get involved through field trips, and also the knowledge that Dan and his multidisciplinary team are generating infuses many of our courses at the school. And you can read more about this at the link on the slide. There is still much to learn about the world's forests and how to manage them. Fortunately, we do have a large number of faculty members spanning many disciplines who are conducting research and teaching courses related to forests. In fact, we have nearly 24 such faculty members. They're pictured here. I'm not going to tell you all about them, but there are some links at the bottom where you can find more information about them if you wish. One of the points that we want to get across this evening is what's really distinctive about studying forests at the Nicholas School. And one of the great benefits we have, or sources of our good fortune, is being at Duke University. Now, Duke's the fifth university where I've taught, and to me it has three distinctive features. One is that it has a strong commitment to putting knowledge in the service of society, to addressing societally important problems. It has a very strong commitment to interdisciplinarity, and it not only talks about being interdisciplinary, in many ways it has created innovative mechanisms for encouraging interdisciplinary programs. And third, it's globally engaged, and is particularly interested in understanding the connections from the local to the global. And I say that the Nicholas School is fortunate to be at Duke given these characteristics. I think particularly fortunate for forestry because these characteristics are really relevant to forests. Forests are a resource of great importance to people around the world. Their management requires an understanding of both the natural and social sciences, and they're important globally as well as locally. Now, training related to forests is nearly as old as Duke itself. The Nicholas School of the Environment dates back to the 1990s, and that's our shield in the upper left. We were formed at that time, some roughly 25 years ago, by the union of three much older parts of Duke University. The lower left is the School of Forestry, established in the 1930s. Bottom right, the Duke University Marine Lab, located in Beaufort, North Carolina, and the upper left, the Duke Department of Geology. So these three parts of the university were brought together to form the School of the Environment. So that School of Forestry goes back to the 1930s. So we have more than 75 years of alumni now coming out in our Master of Forestry program. So lots of history here around forestry, and that's actually quite appropriate, and also quite appropriate that Professor Richter is studying forest history in this region. Forestry actually in the United States actually started in western North Carolina at a place called the Cradle of Forestry. And we work very hard to build on those traditions that go back to the late 1800s. Let's talk in a little more detail now about the pathways for training for a forest-related career at Duke. Basically, there's two pathways, but I'm going to wrap up this slide by saying you shouldn't worry too much about this choice at this point. The first pathway is the Master of Forestry. This was established back in the 1930s, as I just hinted. It's a 2-year program with 5 core competencies. In this program, you learn how to measure forest resources. You learn about the biological, ecological principles that govern how forests work. You learn about forest management. You learn about forest policy and administration, and also professional ethics pervade this program. This is a professionally accredited program, accredited by the Society of American Foresters. The Master of Forestry is a degree that is known around the world, and that professional accreditation is required for some positions and strongly preferred for others. The second pathway is the Master of Environmental Management. Now, this is a newer degree. This was established in the 1970s. I say newer, but still we've got a good long history with this degree too. It's a 2-year program. It has 7 concentrations. They're listed here. And each and every one of these concentrations, in one way or another, is connected to forests. And as I said at the top of this slide, what I want to emphasize is that at this point, I wouldn't worry so much about which of these degrees might be best for you. I'd encourage you to think more about whether Duke is a place that offers the resources for you to learn about forests and forestry and train for your career. I'll show you in a slide or two some of the alums who've come out of our program, and it includes a mix of alums who've gotten a Master of Forestry or Master of Environmental Management, and they've all had very distinguished careers. So it's possible to have a very impactful career in working on forest, whether you train through the Master of Forestry and Master of Environmental Management. Students often switch during the first year from one to the other as they learn more about them. So don't worry a lot about that choice between them. It is also very common for students with forest interest to combine those two, to do both the MF and the MEM, and that's possible in 2.5 years. So an extra semester at Duke, and you can get both of those degrees. I promised to tell you a bit about some of our alums, so here's just a half dozen of them. Robert Bonney, MF, MEM 94, was the top natural resources official under President Obama, currently spending a couple years with us at Duke as a David Rubenstein Fellow. Sarah Childs, MEM 08, is currently the director of the Duke Forest, and we'll tell you more about the Duke Forest in a moment. Katie Hetz, MF, MEM 94, is a leading fire analyst for the U.S. Forest Service in the western states. And Of course, the issue of wildfires is perhaps the biggest issue facing forests in the western part of the country. Zakiya Leggett, MF 2000, went from her MF to get a PhD, was a research scientist with Weyerhaeuser Corporation for a number of years, and more recently jumped back to academia and has a job at North Carolina State University as a professor. Paul Trianovsky, MEM 93, Chief Conservation Officer for the Sustainable Forests Initiative in Washington, D.C., and Keiki Worthington, MF MEM 16, is the Forest Carbon Manager for Blue Source, a small company in the San Francisco Bay Area in California, which works on innovative ways of promoting carbon sequestration. And one of those ways is through managing forests to sequester more carbon, and that's the portfolio that Keiki manages. So just illustrating alums working in a range of sectors with a mix of backgrounds, some MF, some MEM, some combining those two degrees. Now, whether you elect to enroll in the MF, the MEM, or both, your forest-related training at Duke will have several key components, and I've listed those here. The first, and perhaps the most important, is that our programs are professionally oriented. We aim to give you the knowledge, skills, and networking that you need to be competitive in the job market when you graduate and to have a successful, impactful career as your post-Nicholas School life goes on. Second is that we combine on-the-ground fieldwork with rigorous data-driven classroom training. We're not a program that's only about being out in the field or only being in the classroom. We put those together. Third, we integrate the natural and social sciences. Working on forest issues, of course, there's a lot of natural science involved, the biology and ecology, but there's also a very important human element. Humans affect forests, and humans benefit from forests in various ways. And the balance of the one's studies on the natural and social sciences really depends on the degree that's chosen and the particular concentration in the case of the MEM. And that's then allows students to have a program that reflects their interests and is individualized to a significant degree. Fourth, and this kind of harkens back to the topic at the beginning, we include training in essential professional skills, communications, teamwork, ethics. And then lastly, we provide opportunities for students to gain real-world experience with real-world clients. Our students have internships after the completion of their spring semester, and those who are in the MEM MF program actually have the benefit of 2 internships since they're here for 5 semesters. And our master's projects are really a different beast than a master's thesis. They include research in them, but we really encourage students to have an actual client for the project, someone that they're doing the work for. Could be a company, could be a nonprofit organization, could be an international agency, could be a government agency, but a real-world organization tackling a real-world problem. And the students then do work on that project over the better course of a year, and then hit the job market with an real example of professional work that they can do. And the opportunity to get real-world experience is not limited to the master's project or internships. We try to build that into our courses. So our professor, Sari Palmroth, has her students work with landowners in North Carolina to help them better understand the options for managing their forest land. And in Duke Environment Magazine last spring, there was a nice cover story about the work that Sari and her students are doing with landowners in the eastern part of the state. And there's a link here if you'd like to bring up that article and read it. I want to talk some about distinctive features. I mentioned this at the beginning in talking about some distinctive features of Duke as a university and why those features make it a good home for the Nicholas School and our forestry program, but a little more specifically to forest-related training. The first 4 of these I've mentioned are programs professionally oriented and science-based. We have a very strong alumni network. Those years and years of alums in the MF and MEM program who are a rich source of advice to us and help to students in landing internships and jobs. Our client-based MPs, which give students an opportunity to demonstrate their professional skills. and the opportunity to combine the MEM and MF. Some other distinctive features, Nicholas School students, whether they're MF or MEM, have the option to complete particular certificates. Another distinctive feature I'll mention is that there are forest-relevant courses and options for concurrent degree programs at other Duke professional schools, our School of Business, our School of Public Policy, Law School, School of Engineering, Divinity School. We have students who take courses at those schools and also combine their MEM or MF with degrees from those schools. I think some would argue the most distinctive feature is the Duke Forest. That is immediately adjacent to Duke's campus. And so if you want to get out in the woods for your research, for a course, or just simply for your pleasure, you don't have to drive a great distance. 5 minutes, you're there. More than 7,000 acres. It is a real live forest. It is professionally managed for sustainable wood production, for wildlife and recreation management, for management of historical sites, for testing of technologies such as drones, host to many research projects. It's both a living laboratory and an outdoor classroom, and it is use in that fashion is going on some 90 years. This just shows a whole bunch of the employers of our recent grads, and there's a mix here of government agencies, nonprofit organizations, and private sector organizations, from big corporations to small consulting firms. And again, some that might surprise you in here, like right in the middle there is MetLife. That's the insurance company. And yes, MetLife is involved in forest land. So again, very, very interesting organizations getting involved in the forestry field.